Welcome back to the Mid Podcast, the show where we overanalyze cartoons meant for children, except they're absolutely not for children anymore. I am your wonderful host. Please make sure you like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know when a video drops, because it may be about your favorite show. Also, you can listen to the show wherever you get your podcasts: Spotify, Apple, wherever. We're everywhere. But let's get into today's episode. We are talking about none other than the greatest cartoon, X-Men 97. And seriously, did anybody else watch this episode and think, Disney, are you okay? Because we had body horror, we had parasites, we had people getting impaled, and we had Wolverine trying to murder his friends. And one of my favorite villains of X-Men shows up, Omega Red. And somehow, the title was Weapon X, Lies, and DVDs. Imagine explaining that sentence to someone in 1997. Hey, Logan fights alien parasites while watching DVDs. Stanley would have asked if you were feeling alright. So, today, we're going to dive into the episode. We're going to break down some major moments, maybe uncover some comic references that kind of flew under the radar, discuss why Wolverine may actually be the villain of this episode, and explain why one tiny detail involving Morph may completely reshape the emotional arc of this season. So, with that being said, let's get into it. So, I've already seen people online saying nothing happened. No, wrong. Nothing happened to Apocalypse's story, but a lot happened to Wolverine's story. So, no, this was not a filler episode. Not every episode has to be about Apocalypse screaming about evolution while standing dramatically in front of lightning. Sometimes we need an episode that reminds everyone why Logan is such a complicated character. Also, many viewers debated whether the episode felt like a detour, while others appreciated its horror atmosphere, which I am not a fan of horror, its character work, and the focus on Wolverine's flaws rather than the season's main apocalypse storyline. Which is nothing wrong with this. Sometimes a little deviation is good. Though, could we say Logan is not the hero here? This is probably the biggest thing that many fans overlooked. Logan lies to everyone. Sabretooth, Lady Deathstrike, Morph, Maverick, Garrison Kane. He tells them they're investigating Weapon X. Technically, that is true. But the real reason? Yeah, he needs his antimanium back. That's it. And knowingly drags everyone into a suicide mission because he believes Weapon X still has the technology to restore what Magneto stripped away. Is that selfish? Yeah, it is. Is it understandable? Yes, but it's still selfish. The episode ultimately reveals Logan's expected the facility still had what he needed and the bonding process available, and he kind of conceals the motive from the team. I don't know if that's a good team leader there, Logan. So was Sabretooth right? And I can't believe I'm saying this, because Sabretooth might be the smartest guy in the room. He realized Logan manipulated everyone. But he doesn't yell, he doesn't attack. He just simply says, "You lied." That's devastating. And because Sabretooth knows Logan better than, well, almost anyone. So, Wolverine's greatest sin, and this is why this episode is so brilliant. Nobody dies because Weapon X exists. People die because Logan made a decision. That's completely different. Kane dies, Maverick dies, Morph nearly dies, and everyone suffers because Logan wanted something. So, all the fans on Reddit also pointed to Wolverine's deception and the consequences it has for teammates as the emotional core of the episode. Even among viewers who thought it was a little self contained? I don't know. The casual viewer probably just sees a bunch of random mutants. Comic fans, they're screaming. You've got Sabretooth, Lady Deathstrike, Maverick, Garrison Kane. These are all characters deeply connected to Wolverine's Weapon X history. Marvel basically assembled the world's worst therapy group. Good job on Team X. Let's talk about Easter egg 2. Mutated birds? The opening attack isn't random. Weapon X experimenting on wildlife has happened repeatedly throughout Marvel Comics. The program has always been portrayed as morally bankrupt. They're not just making super soldiers. Super soldiers. Winter Soldier. Best super soldier ever. Oh, back to X-Men. They're making monsters. Easter egg 3. The Brood. This may be the biggest comic callback. The parasites aren't generic aliens, they're the Brood. Wasn't that a faction in WWE? And if you've read Chris Claremont's legendary X-Men run, you immediately knew these things were about to become horrifying. The Brood are explicitly identified in the facility's records, beginning one of the X-Men's classic alien enemies into the animated series. Okay, as I said, not a fan of horror movies. Don't watch them, don't like them. Will basically shut my eyes if there's a commercial for a new upcoming horror movie coming to theaters. So this episode is basically The Thing, The Alien, and The Fly, only except it has Wolverine in it. So you don't know who's infected, you don't know who is safe, you don't know who transforms next, and honestly, Marvel Animation deserves some credit. This is probably the closest we've gotten to full-on sci-fi horror in an X-Men cartoon. So, Morph. Yeah, Morph continues to be the MVP. And I love that the show was finally understanding Morph's character. For years, Morph was basically, hey everyone, I can turn into Wolverine. Now he becomes the emotional center of Logan's story. Morph is the conscience Logan doesn't want to hear. Alright, Morph's transformations. And if you blinked, you probably missed half of them. He turns into a Sasquatch, a Guardian, Spider Man, a Silver Samurai, and each transformation isn't done randomly. Each one solves a specific tactical problem, and that's brilliant animation. This episode packs several rapid fire transformations into action scenes, including Sasquatch, Guardian, Spider Man, and Silver Samurai. Let's talk about the title, the DVD joke. Weapon X, lies, and DVDs. Well, first, it's hilarious. Second, it's actually a callback. The original X-Men, the animated series, had an episode titled Weapon X, Lies, and Videotape. And yes, videotape. VHS tapes. I know some of y'all are too young to remember those. Itself referencing the film Sex, Lies, and Videotape. They just updated the videotape to DVDs as it fits the late 90s setting while paying tribute to the earlier series. Well, there's one detail I feel that you may have missed. So, when Moore finds the DVDs, everyone's focusing on the titles. But here's the important part: Weapon X documented everything, every experiment, every failure, every victim. That means, Weapon X wasn't just conducting experiments, they're building an archive. Knowledge, control, data. Yeah, that's scarier than most monsters. So, in segment 2, we're going to talk about Omega Red's surprise appearance, the hidden Alpha Flight references, Lady Deathstrike steals every scene, Wolverine's guilt, the samurai symbolism in the ending, and a little more Easter eggs that I think you may have missed. So, after this short break, we'll be back to discuss that. All right, segment 2. And we're starting it off with Omega Red. And something about the word Omega. I mean, one of my favorite wrestlers, Kenny Omega. One of my favorite villains in X-Men, Omega Red. There's got to be some connection. I'll work on that and figure it out. So, can we appreciate how this show understands one simple concept? Less is more. Omega Red isn't on screen for 20 minutes. He isn't delivering a 10-minute villain speech. He wakes up. Wait a minute. They have him in like cryo, just like they have Winter Soldier. He's called Omega Red. He is Russian. Winter Soldier was taken to Russia. Wow, I just realized that. Maybe that's why I like them so much. Anyway, he wakes up, looks around, and he chooses violence. My kind of man. Yeah, that's Omega Red in a nutshell. And to me, it is perfect. So, we all know Omega Red is basically a walking nuclear disaster. And if you're a newer fan, here is why Omega Red is such a terrifying character. Most villains have to hit you. Oh, no. Omega Red just has to stand near you. He has coils that can drain your life force. Every fight becomes a race against time. He is one of the few villains who turns survival into the objective. And this episode treats him like an emergency rather than a mastermind, emphasizing how dangerous he is the moment he is released from status. All right. So why was Omega Red frozen? This is something I haven't seen many people discuss. So Weapon X didn't imprison Omega Red because they defeated him. They preserved him? Let's think about it. I mean, if they want to preserve him and he comes out looking like Winter Soldier, I'm all for that. Weapon X isn't just creating weapons anymore. I think they're collecting them. And if you're got a Wolverine, a Sabretooth, a Lady Deathstrike, and an Omega Red all connected to the same facility, I don't think that's a coincidence. Kind of sounds like an arm race to me. So let's talk about who steals this episode. And it is Lady Deathstrike. I know everyone is talking about Wolverine. I get it. He's frickin' Wolverine. But I need to give Lady Deathstrike some love. And normally, I am anti-women. Every scene she's in, it has tension. And she still feels dangerous. And she's still sarcastic. Maybe that's why I like her. And hey, she's still completely capable of ending your day. She isn't seeking revenge anymore. And here's something fans who skipped the original animated series may have missed. Comic book Lady Deathstrike and animated series Lady Deathstrike are not identical characters. The original series already resolved much of her vendetta against Logan. This episode builds on that continuality, not a straight adaptation of the comics. A number of longtime viewers pointed out that her willingness to work with Logan makes sense within the continuality of the 1990s animated series, even if it does differ from comic expectations. All right, evil scientist time. Every lab needs one, right? So here comes Dr. Cornelius. And well, he's not just another evil scientist, he is one of the architects of Weapon X. Seeing him again immediately connects this episode to Logan's deepest trauma. And notice something, he doesn't even get a dramatic villain speech. The Brood, yeah, they erase him before he has the chance. Some may say poetic justice. Weapon X spent years stripping people from their humanity. And now, its own creator, well, he loses his. So are the Brood scarier than Sentinels? I would have to say so. And you know why. Sentinels, they want mutants dead. The Brood, well, they want everyone transformed. That's a completely different kind of horror. Death ends suffering. A simulation does not. All right, let's talk about the horror direction and how it's outstanding from coming from someone who doesn't like anything horror. I love how the episode slows down. You have dark hallways, emergency lighting, always important, doors creaking, always important in horror, and nobody knows who's infected. So the writers clearly took inspiration from classic movies like The Thing and Alien, and they leaned into paranoia instead of nonstop action. Alrighty, let's talk about the Alpha Flight love. So when Morph becomes Sasquatch, that's not just a cool visual, it's a reminder of Logan's Canadian roots. Alpha Flight has always been tied to Wolverine's past. Then Morph shifts into Guardian as well. Those aren't random transformations. They're visually shorthand, reminding longtime readers that Logan, yes, he did have a life before the X-Men. So I'm serious when I say this, so do not laugh at me. Morph, he's the real hero. Without Morph, everyone's gonna die. Logan's infected, Sabretooth is furious, Lady Deathstrike's outnumbered, we awaken Omega Red. So who keeps everyone together? Morph! And the emotional payoff hits even harder because Morph never gives up on Logan, even after discovering he has been manipulated. So Morph repeatedly becomes the team's strategist and emotional anchor, a point many fans highlighted after this episode aired. And I have to agree with the fans. Without Morph, this team, they'll disintegrate. So, did you catch this? The Thing? Morph briefly transformed into Ben Grimm? The Thing! It's a tiny cameo. It only lasts a moment, and if you blinked, you probably missed it. But it confirms once again that the Fantastic Four exist in the animated universe. Yay! Alrighty. Then he morphs into Spider-Man. Every time they sneak Peter Parker into this universe, the internet loses its mind. And rightfully so, with a new Spider-Man movie coming out in a few weeks. It's another reminder that Marvel Animation isn't treating those heroes like isolated franchises and that they all are building a shared world. All right. So Wolverine finally gets his antimanium back, and I'm torn. On one hand, the scene is awesome, the animation, fantastic, the music, absolutely perfect. Kyle Dodd absolutely sells Logan's pain, and then on the other hand, did it happen a little too soon? Maybe? One of the more common fan criticisms is that Logan's Bone Claw era ended before the show fully explored how losing the antimanium changed him. The biggest theme I feel everyone may have missed, and it wasn't that it's actually about getting the antimanium back, it's about addiction. Logan convinces himself that he needs that metal. He risked his friendships, he risks innocent lives, he lies to the people who trust him. Sounds familiar? Yeah, it sounds like everyday life. So replace the antimanium with almost any obsession, and the storyline would still work. And that's probably why the episode resonates. The claws, they're just metaphors. Okay, my final favorite moment doesn't involve a fight. It's Sabretooth's final look. It's that look Sabretooth gives Logan after everything is over. There's disappointment there. Not triumph, not hatred, just disappointment. That's somehow worse. And when Sabretooth thinks you've crossed a line, oh, buddy, you've probably really crossed that line. So, coming up in segment 3, we talk about some more hidden Easter eggs in the DVDs in the lab, why the title is smarter than fans realize, the symbolism behind Wolverine's rebirth, connections to classic X Men the Animated Series episodes, and why this episode may become one of the most important Wolverine stories in the series, despite barely advancing the apocalypse plot. So, we'll be back in a few seconds. Alrighty, you've hung in with me thus far. 2 more segments to go, and we'll be done. So let's talk about that ending. I've seen a lot of people say, well, that was just a fun Wolverine episode. No, 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 it wasn't. This episode fundamentally changes Logan's emotional journey for the rest of the season. And that is exactly why it works. This wasn't about the claws, it wasn't about Weapon X, it wasn't even about the Brood. It was about one question: how much of Wolverine is Logan, and how much of Wolverine is Weapon X? That's the question the episode quietly answers from the beginning to the end. The symbolism behind the antimanium. Most fans see this as an upgrade. The writers, well, they clearly don't. Every time Logan gets his medal back, he gains power. Yay! But he also regains the physical reminder of the worst thing that ever happened to him. Let's think about it. Nobody celebrates surviving trauma by wearing it around their neck, yet Logan literally carries his trauma inside his skeleton. That's kind of heartbreaking. This episode isn't about becoming stronger, it's about becoming trapped again. The antimanium isn't just metal, it's chains. Really shiny chains. That's what Weapon X wanted. A weapon, not a man. And Logan willingly walks back into that nightmare because he believes he can't protect the people he loves without it. That's not heroic, that's tragic. That's real tragic. So let's talk about those files Weapon X has. So, did you notice all the old case files and archive recordings scattered throughout the facility? Those aren't just your background props. Weapon X has always been obsessed with documentation. Every experiment, every mutation, every failure, every success. The files remind us that Logan wasn't treated like a human being, he was treated like a research project. So, longtime comic readers may have noticed the parts of the laboratory resemble classic Weapon X illustrations. You had narrow corridors, observation rooms, industrial steel architecture. It's a fantastic visual callback without becoming a shot for shot remake. So, we need to give Victor Creed some credit and talk about a detail everyone missed about Sabretooth. Did you notice he never says Logan doesn't deserve the antimanium? He said Logan doesn't deserve their trust. Huge difference. Sabretooth isn't angry about the mission, he is angry about the deception. That makes the conflict emotional instead of physical. All right, Morph. As we said, he was the MVP of the episode. So, his character growth? If someone had told me 25 years ago that Morph will become one of the deepest characters in the franchise, uh, I probably would have laughed at you. Morph please to kick off the emotional stakes. So now, has Morph become the heart of the team? It seems every time Logan starts slipping into his Weapon X mentality, Morph is there to pull him back to being Logan. Now we need to pay attention to how often the episode frames Logan like an actual animal. We have low camera angles, growling, heavy breathing, claws first, dialogue second. That's intentional. Weapon X didn't just alter his body, it tried to reduce him to instinct. The direction constantly reminds us of that. So, does the brood represent more than monsters? I think this is one of the biggest themes fans may overlook. The brood don't just infect bodies, they erase identities. Weapon X did exactly the same thing, just different methods, but same results. One uses science, the other uses biology. Both steal individuality, and that's why they fit together so perfectly in the same story. All right, let's talk about it. The horror lighting. Watch how often faces are partially hidden by shadows. That is classic horror filmmaking. But in this case, it's also symbolic. Nobody in this facility is completely innocent. Everyone is hiding something. Yes, including Logan. I've seen complaints about episode 5 doesn't move the apocalypse story forward. And I actually think that's its biggest strength. Imagine if every episode had to escalate the world ending threat. Well, eventually, nothing will feel special. Instead, the writers pause the main plot and ask, what emotional baggages are our heroes still carrying? To me, that's good storytelling. Because when the big finale arrives, we understand these characters better than we did before. Alright, this is something animation fans will appreciate. So, do you listen carefully whenever Logan loses control? The sound mix changes, the breathing gets louder, the music pulls back, the claws become sharper in the audio. The show wants you inside Logan's head. It's subtle, but incredibly effective. All right, my favorite performance, Cal Dodd. Again, how does this man keep doing it? He doesn't just voice Wolverine, he is Wolverine. The anger, the regret, the exhaustion. When Wolverine realizes how badly he's hurt the people around him, you don't need a dramatic speech. You can hear it in his voice. That's that's good voice acting. So, my favorite scene isn't an action scene. It's the silence afterward. Nobody celebrates. No high fives are given. You don't hear mission accomplished. Everyone just looks tired. And that's realistic. Real trauma doesn't end with a victory pose. Sometimes surviving, that's all you've got. So, this episode probably won't be remembered because it had the biggest explosions. It'll be remembered because it reminded us that Wolverine isn't compelling because he's indestructible. He's compelling because he is broken. And every time he starts putting the pieces back together, bam! Something from his past tries to tear them apart again. And I think that's what makes Logan timeless. So, in segment 4, I will give my final score for the episode, answer some unanswered questions, give a prediction for next episode, maybe do a funny rant, and may tell you why secretly this may be one of the top 10 X-Men animated episodes ever created. So, come back for segment 4. Alrighty, we are in the final stretch. So, where does this episode rank for me? Well, me personally, I give it an A. Not because it's the biggest episode of the season, not because it advances every storyline, but because it does something that modern superhero shows often forget to do. It lets the characters breathe. Sometimes the best stories aren't about saving the world, they are about saving yourself. So, there are 5 things that I think fans are still overlooking. Starting with number 5, Weapon X never really dies. I mean, you can destroy the lab, you can eliminate the scientists, probably you can erase the files. But Weapon X isn't just a place, it's an idea. The idea that people can be turned into tools. That's a theme that's followed Logan for decades. And this episode, it reminds us that destroying a building doesn't erase the damage that it caused. Number 4, Logan did not win. This is something I've seen a lot of people get wrong. Yes, he gets his famous claws back. Yes, he does survive. He does defeat the immediate threat. But emotionally, he loses. He damages relationships. He lies to people who trusted him. He proves that even after everything he's been through, he's still vulnerable to make terrible decisions. That's not victory, that's a warning. Number 3, Morph has become an elite character. If you had told fans of the original 1990s animated series that Morph would become one of the most emotional pillars of the team, yeah, most of us would have laughed at you. But now, Morph has turned into the friend every hero needs. He's not the strongest, he's not the fastest, he's not the most powerful. He's just the one willing to tell you when you're wrong. And every great team has someone like that. Number two, the horror worked because it was personal. The Brood, they're terrifying. But the real fear wasn't the monsters. It was watching Logan slowly become the version of himself he never wanted to be again. That's why the horror lands. It's psychological more than physical. All right, number one. The episode, it's about identity, if you did not know that. And I think that is the biggest thing that most people missed. The question wasn't, can Wolverine survive Weapon X? Yeah, well, he's already answered that. The real question is, can Logan ever stop defining himself by what Weapon X did to him? That is a much harder question, and it's one that the series continues to ask. So let's have a little fun, and where do we go from here? So, predictions for episode 6. My first prediction, the emotional consequences of Logan's deception aren't over. Even if the team forgives him, well, trust isn't something you can rebuild overnight. So expect that tension to linger. Prediction number 2, the fallout from Weapon X may ripple into the larger season arc. Whether through recovered technology, intelligence, or simply Logan's changed outlook, I don't think this mission exists in isolation. Prediction 3, if Apocalypse remains the central threat, every character is going to be tested. Not just physically, but emotionally. This episode reminded us that the X-Men's greatest weaknesses aren't always their powers. Sometimes it's their guilt, sometimes it's their pride, and sometimes it's the secrets they keep from each other. All right, here are some of my favorite moments from this episode. Morph's rapid fire transformations. They all looked fantastic. Sabretooth realizing Logan manipulated everyone. He threw no punches, he didn't yell, he looked like the disappointed parent. That was just powerful storytelling. Number 3, Omega Red's return. It was short, it was violent, it was memorable. Number 2, the horror atmosphere. Marvel Animation leaned into suspense instead of nonstop action, and I think it paid off this episode. And number 1, Logan finally admitting through his actions more than his words that he let his obsession cloud his judgment. That emotional payoff made the entire episode worthwhile. So, I still have a few questions. How much damage has this mission done to Logan's closest relationships? What long term consequences will come from the revisiting Weapon X? And perhaps the biggest question of all, can Wolverine truly move forward? Or is he destined to keep reliving the same cycle every time his past resurfaces? Those are the questions I'm hoping the rest of the season explores, so we will have to find out. Alright, so I'm going to throw in a funny rant for this week. Can we have a quick conversation about the title? Weapon X, Lies, and DVDs. Imagine explaining that to someone who hasn't watched the episode. Hey, what's today's X-Men about? Oh, Wolverine, alien parasites, secret government experiments, emotional trauma, and DVDs. DVDs, not Blu-rays. Not streaming, not cloud storage, DVDs. And somewhere a teenager just asked, What's a DVD? Congratulations, we are officially old. Next season, they'll find the secret Weapon X archives on a stack of burnt CDRs, and half of the audience is going to think those are decorative coasters. And if Beast ever has to explain how to rewind a VHS tape, I think I'm checking myself into Professor X school for the chronologically confused. All right. At first glance, yes, episode 5 looked like a detour. It's easy to think, well, the apocalypse story barely moved, but that's selling the episode short. The best serial shows know when to slow down. They know when to stop sprinting toward the finale and spend a little time letting the audience know the characters. And that's exactly what we got with this episode. This wasn't just another Wolverine adventure. It was a reminder that even the toughest member of the X Men, yeah, he still has a haunted past. And that's why Logan continues to resonate after all these years. It's not because he heals, not because he has really cool claws. It's because no matter how many battles the poor man wins, he still is fighting the one within himself. And that's great character writing. And that is why this episode deserves far more credit than what it's getting. So, if you enjoyed today's breakdown, let me know. What was your favorite Easter egg? Did you catch something that I missed? What Where does the episode rank in season 2 for you? And most importantly, would you have trusted Wolverine after this mission? So if you enjoyed this episode of the Mid Podcast, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your fellow X Men fans. Also, you can hear this episode wherever you get your podcast from. So until next time, I need you to remember sometimes the greatest battle isn't against Sentinels, it isn't against Apocalypse, it isn't even against Magneto. Sometimes it's against your own past. So, we will see you on the next one. Have a great day.